Welcome to MANstream Media. Tonight's MANstream Media is coming to you from, I'm in North Carolina, and Warren is out in California, and Paul's in Houston. So good evening, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you out there in Carolina.
Yeah, and Warren?
I'm doing really well.
Good. That's good. And of course, MANstream Media is a place where you get the news and the issues from a male-friendly perspective. And tonight we're going to talk about something that has a lot to do with men. We're going to talk about the male birth control pill. And I'm telling you, I've learned more about the male birth control pill in the last couple of days from Warren Farrell than I knew about before, period. So I think the perfect person to get us started tonight on this male birth control pill is Warren. Warren, can you start us out?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that comes up when I bring up the male birth control pill is that women will often say, well, men have a condom, and so they can use that. What's the big issue? And yet if you reverse that and you said to women, well, you have a condom also, we have condoms. But if somebody said, let's take the woman's pill away because just leave women with a condom, would you be okay with that? And almost every woman will say, well, good point. All right. And then the next level is, I don't know that I could trust a man who said he was on the pill. And so that brings up a much of a deeper issue, which is that we live in a culture where women have had the pill for maybe 50 years now, and men have been expected, millions, really billions of men have been expected to trust a woman when she said she's on the pill. But when I asked men, if a man said, to you, don't worry, sweetie, I'm on the pill, what would you say? Most women's immediate response is laughter, sort of like, right, I'm going to trust him if he says he's on the pill, which gives us a little bit of a perspective of one of the really big issues in the world, which is the issue of believability, the believability of men versus the believability of women. But the pill is probably, so what is the importance of the pill, and then why is it not out? When I did the research for this, for the myth of male power originally, before I wrote Father and Child Reunion, back in 1993, there were about 8 or 9 significant scientific advances that made it look like the pill would be able to be available within 5 to 10 years. And the discussion then was that drug companies just didn't believe men would be interested in it. Well, since then, there's been a lot of research done to show that men are very interested in it. They would be interested in it whether it was in pill form. They would be interested in it in taking an injection like once every 6 months and so on. That in a lot of different forms, men would in fact be interested in it. The pill everyone agrees that the pill created more freedom for women than any other single thing probably during the 20th century. It has changed the way we look at sex. It's changed the way that women have behaved and been able to operate so much more freely. But yet, every time a man puts his penis in a woman's body, he's putting his life in her hands, because the woman can abort the child, the fetus, and potentially future child without even informing him in most states, and there's no punishment for that. But she can abort or she can sue for support. The man has to agree or agree. And so when I do research on men who have not taken responsibility to be with children, when I talk to the men and I say, what is that about? Why would you have a child and not take responsibility for the child? The man almost always says to me, by far the most frequent response is, Warren, I really didn't want this child. I was not a part of the process of planning this child. And so I started to ask about this in men's groups that I formed. And first of all, oftentimes when I would come into men's group as a guest presenter, the group was oftentimes had been 6 months or a year in operation, and very frequently men had never had this discussion. The discussion being, did you have a child, 2 or 3 children, in the privacy and confidentiality of an all men's group? Did you plan that child? And once the question is opened to the group, usually a man in the group will say, actually, I'm having my son or daughter is one of the best things that ever happened to me. But the way that it happened is kind of interesting. which is that I said I really would be prefer to not have it for a few more years or not have a child at all. And then one day my wife came to me and she was crying, and she said, and crying with tears of happiness, and she said, I'm so excited. I just found out I was pregnant. And he goes, well, wait a minute, you're on the pill. And yes, I was. I forgot to take it, for a while, and suddenly, and I'm realizing I'm pregnant, and I'm feeling these hormones come up in me, and I just, oh, sweetie, I hope you're going to be enthusiastic about this. I didn't really want to. I didn't plan it this way either, but I'm feeling like this may be the best thing for us, and it can bring us closer together. It will give us something to really care for as a joint partnership. And he's thinking to himself, joint partnership? Wouldn't a joint partnership start with a mutual decision to create this? But he never says this because he sees his wife filled with excitement, filled with tears and fear of him having a different perspective on this. And so he he just shuts his mouth. And 8, 10, 15 years later, we're in this men's group. And he's been holding it in for the entire 8, 10, 15 years. And then once one man in the group opens up, many men in the group share some version of that. Some men with a child that they have had in marriage, other men with a surprise of a woman who said that she was on birth control, saying that she has had a child. Other men who have had paternity tests and found out that they weren't the father, that even that when they were told that they were the father. And so there's huge amounts. So when I find that a man is not responsible for being involved with the child care, very frequently it comes down to the man not being a partner in the process of making the decision to have that child. He sometimes feels tricked into it. He sometimes just feels like it wasn't his. He didn't want to. That was not a responsibility he and the woman agreed on. He feels, and yet he feels very frequently he has to be silent and quiet about that. So we have millions of children out there who are oftentimes aborted, and one of the things behind many abortions is that the man did not want the child, and then the woman says, I don't want to raise it alone, and if she can't persuade the man to marry her and raise the child with her, and she doesn't want to raise it on her own, she goes ahead and she either does or doesn't have an abortion. Either way, it's a trauma. If she has an abortion, it's often a trauma for her, and if she doesn't have an abortion, it's a different type of raising a child by her own is a tough experience. And so the men's birth control pill will allow a man and a woman to be a partner in the process right at the outset, a partner from conception through to the process of raising a child. One cannot ask a person to put out millions, about $250,000, now it's $350,000 to raise a child, 20 to all your life to be responsible and involved with that child. If she or he, or if he in this case, does not have a role in the original decision-making process about that. And so those are a few of the off-the-cuff types of things about that. But I'll open it up to the three of us, and we'll take other dimensions of this from there. Paul or Tom?
Well, I'm guessing that maybe Tom, bless him, is on the road and does not have the normal high-speed connection that he usually has. So now it appears that his mic is muted, so that might be the problem. But I'll go ahead while he's dealing with the foreign computer issues and throw my 2 cents worth into this.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We
trying to say to Warren, and I guess I did it in a mute fashion, was that one of the things that he said that I wanted to go back to was the whole believability piece, because I think that's critical for us to look at as far as the pill goes, is that whole believability thing where women are believed but men are not. I mean, that's a pretty important thing to look at. Don't you think, Warren?
I do, and the data on that is fascinating. When drug companies, one of the reasons that they've been postponing and postponing funding the last stages of research and distributing a pill was the fear that women wouldn't believe men. And when we do very major surveys on that, we find a dichotomy. Women say that if it's the first time or two with a man and there's not really a relationship developed, they often don't trust a man. But only 1.5 to 2% of women who define themselves as being in a relationship say they don't trust the man that they're in the relationship with on these types of issues. So almost 99% of women would trust a man that they're in a relationship with. And of course, when you're in a relationship, that's the time that you're most likely to make a decision about whether or not to have a child. And so but this data is not out there to the drug companies. And so there are maybe 6 significant advances that make a pill or some type of significant positive male birth control right on the edge of being put out there to the market, and companies are not aware of the fact that there's enormous amounts of desire on the part of men to in fact be a part of this process in the form of preventing unwanted pregnancies.
Yes.
Let me go ahead and throw in something here. I think I'm probably about to upset some people with some of my opinions here. I could even upset one or both of my peers. I don't say upset, but they might strongly disagree with me. I think that this discussion of a male pill, male birth control, is a really valuable discussion. It's an important one that this society is very resistant to having out in the open. Men still fear a lot of rejection from women for asserting for their need and want for reproductive control. But to me, the argument about the male pill is just a fraction of the larger piece of reproductive rights. And that, to me, is where the real core problem lies for men. And that even boils down to a much more central question. If we supposedly are looking at achieving some sort of parity gender-wise in this culture, is consent to sex consent to parenthood? For women, it is not. Consent to sex only leaves her with a wide range of options, which can forever impact the life of the man she had sex with, which can forever impact or terminate the life of the child, who can put the child in a foreign family, can take the child to a safe drop-off, adoption, collect child support. She can raise the child without telling the father for 12, 15 years, and then go to any court in the country and get an order for him to pay all that back child support or be imprisoned. This is a range of options that is staggering power in the hands of people over the lives of other people. And what are men's options? That is men's options. It's zero. It's absolutely no reproductive rights whatsoever. And here's the point that I think that some will find contention with, is that if we're ever going to find some sort of equity, I mean, I believe in reproductive rights. I do. I support that. I mean, I see abortion as something, I mean, on a personal level, I find tragic. I wish there were many, many fewer of them. But do I believe that criminalizing abortions is a viable solution? No, I do not. I think it's insane, and it results in more destruction. But until men have the same option, that consent to sex does not mean consent to parenting. That means literally that men should be allowed to legally, if their girlfriend or wife indeed says, I'm pregnant, he should be able to say, that is your choice. and you are going to be responsible for that choice, just like she has that right with him. If we don't do that, and I know how extreme that must sound to some people, but the fact is, if you're going to have reproductive parity between men and women, if you're going to have any credible sense of equality between men and women when it comes to reproductive rights, it means that consent to sex does not mean consent to parenting. It means that you can unilaterally decide to opt out. Both sides. Women already have that option set up in 100 different ways, and men have nothing but jails and debt and public shame waiting for their options that would be the same options the woman has the legal right and is supported for choosing. So, I mean, I'm throwing that out there, guys, and I know that probably sounds really radical, and I will say this, at the next conference I'm going to be speaking on men's reproductive rights, or lack thereof. I expect this to be a very lively conference with probably a lot of debate and a lot of questions, but I don't think we get a step forward. Talking about male pills, great, we need them, they should be there, people should have choices, but until we admit that we live in this double standard society that says women have all the choice, they're driving the car once they have the seed, and he is strapped into the front seat with her, whether he wants to be or not, but that she has the freedom to get out of the car anytime she wants, as long as that's going on, we only have a sham. We have an appearance of equality, but we don't have it. And that's my 2 cents.
I couldn't. Tom, go ahead.
I like that, Paul. I can't see any logical argument against it. I mean, if one party is going to have rights, then why shouldn't the other party also have rights? You'd have to do some interesting kinds of dancing there to work it out for both. But you know, the general scheme that you're talking about seems fair to me.
Well, I think if you implemented that you would see the abortion rate drop like a prom dress. Because,
Prom dress is wrong.
yeah, they go right to the floor, I'm told. Not personal experience.
I should have dated the woman you took to the prom.
Yeah, well, I had the right date. So, but I really do think that when you start talking about burdening people with for responsibility for their choices, if women don't have the option to just use the guy and not use him, take the money and run, don't tell him about his kid, if you start taking away those options and start assigning responsibilities that come with well-deserved reproductive rights for women, I think you will see the abortion rate drop, because I think you will see a lot more women become less likely to get pregnant because they forgot to take their pills and are stealing condoms, which happens, and even there has been burglaries into sperm banks. There was one woman in California that broke into a sperm bank, stole sperm, used it to impregnate herself, and then went back and sued the donor for child support and won.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
I will find that story and get a link into Lowbar. But as long as we got a culture like that, I mean, it's a nice, polite conversation about male birth control pills, and as Warren says, he's right, it's a very important one. But we have such a sham of reproductive rights going on that it's hard to feel genuine about it without this point. And I'd love to hear Warren's deal. But
when I did the research for Father and Child Reunion, I ended up coming up with what I called Father's ABC rights, and the B was for birth control and also the right to be believed, but the A right was on the issue of abortion, and the C right is on the right to care equally for the child, to not have a child that when there's a divorce, for the woman to have more the option to be the primary caretaker if she wants it, and that's and so the ABC rights are related to abortion, the birth control, and the caring. But the abortion, I think, issue is something that many women have a real emotionally visceral response to. But I think that the only way of going is the way you're just describing, Paul. is that basically, let's say that there is a woman is pregnant, and so I think that there needs to be, as part of the law, a requirement on her part to report that pregnancy to the man who she believes was responsible to help create it within a certain period of time. And for the man and woman then to make a decision. And if the woman wants to have the child without his involvement, she should have the right to do that, but have to sign something that says that he has no responsibility whatsoever. Conversely, if the man wants to have the child, she should have the obligation to complete the term of the child. He should finance it. He should finance the entire raising of the child, but she should not have an obligation to do that. And so that's so if it's a unilateral decision, it's a unilateral responsibility that emanates from that unilateral decision. And I think if we have that type of law that sort of treats both sexes fairly on that issue. But at the moment, what happens is I mentioned what you were talking about before to a friend of mine who was president of a major company out here in California. And I could feel as I was talking with him that he was looking at me like, Warren, you make a lot of sense most of the time, but you're just pushing this a little bit too far. By a little bit too far is certainly, and the issue that I was talking about was that a woman can have a child, bring that child up for 16 or 18 years, never have the man that helped to create that child, the father, never having him even told about that. And if that man happens to become successful, she can sue for child support and retroactively for the entire 16 years of a child that he never knew was his. And he literally laughed at me and argued with me that that was just so highly unlikely. About a month later, he called me and said, I'm just so feeling awkward here because exactly what I laughed at you about has happened to me. What can I do? How can I help?
Oh.
Well, this man is very well connected, and in California, and after a while, he was able to, through lawyers, his money, and his connections, able to get out of the process with a minimal amount of payment. But it was if he had not been so well connected, and still tens of thousands of dollars later in legal fees, plus a significant payment to her, but not the payment she originally wanted. That was, and he had no rights to even be involved with the child up until that. I think it was 16, and when the legal case began. So that's one scenario. Another scenario. I'm flying on a plane to Sacramento. On the plane next to me is a guy and a young woman, maybe in sophomore, junior year in college at Fresno State. They are flirting with they've never met each other before. They're flirting up a storm. They don't even see that I exist. The plane, though, is about ready to come down, and we're told that there's a problem with it landing, and we have to circle multiple times. Then, because we're constantly being interrupted with the pilot telling us what the current status is, they look over at me and they see that I have a big piece of parchment paper, and the parchment paper was a parchment paper that I was going to post on the Capitol building when I was running for governor. With 10 principles of what I felt was important for the Democratic Party to undertake that it had not undertaken. And so the woman said, "Can I see this? Can you unroll this parchment paper? Can I see what it is that you're going to post on the wall, like Martin, Luther?" And so I said, "Sure." And she says, "That's fascinating. Paternity fraud. Tell me about that." And I explained what the principle of paternity fraud was, and she just thinks for a second, and she goes, "Yeah, I get that." She said, "Actually, there's two. Oh no, that's not true. It's three women that I know who had told me that they felt the man that they were involved with was going to break up with them, and they were going to make believe that they were pregnant or become pregnant, with the thought that if they became pregnant, that they would not, in fact, break up with them. And the guy she was flirting with, his mouth just dropped. And she said, no, I want to, realizing what happened, she clarified that she totally disagreed with those women. Now look at the demographic here. This is two college-age women. These are not uneducated women. I'm sorry, this is a college-age woman talking about three of her women friends in college at Fresno State. So this is not a group of poor women, uneducated women. These are educated women. This is a 1993 that this happened, and that's not true. This is 2003 that it happened. So it's about 11 years ago. And so this is, and so that is the degree to which this is still a current worry today, that a men's birth control pill alone, in addition to other rights like the abortion rights and the right to be equally involved with the child, that in a non-intact family situation, would begin to clarify. So men's ABC rights, I think, are really crucial, and the most important single one of them that's most likely to be viable is because science always takes a lead over social attitudes, especially when it comes to believability for men, is a men's birth control pill.
Indeed. And I think we've seen some of the harrowing messes that men can get in without the pill, but I also think that having the pill is going to give men real power. You know, I think that it'd be a wonderful thing if it could happen. And what is the probability of this kind of thing happening? What's the scientific possibility, Warren? Do you know about that?
Yes, I do. There's about 6, 7 forums that are really within the framework of being able to be released. One is called a clean sheets pill, which is a pill in which you the sperm does not, your ejaculation does not actually occur, but you have the sensation of ejaculation. And the value of the clean sheets pill is that there's a vitamin A that is destroyed by by taking a needle, and then you do that about once a month, and that by the destruction of that vitamin A, the sperm needs vitamin A in order to be able to reproduce. And so the man receives the experience of ejaculation. Without the sperm, there's no problem with STDs, and that's one of the reasons I like it a lot. And then also there's no chance of pregnancy, almost no chance of pregnancy, and it's also reversible. And it's like a once every 5-6 months that you need to be refreshed. And so I think that's a really good option. The other one I know that you know about, Paul, so about the Vassal gel. Do you want to share a little bit of the information about that?
Well, actually, our resident expert, I would suggest that people go to the Parsonage Foundation and take a look at that. It has never been made particularly clear to me exactly how basal gel works, but that it does. It is, I believe, something that is administered into the urethra of men, and it takes some action to block sperm production that way, and that it's very, very reliable, like 99.9%. It's statistically as reliable as birth control pills, and it's reversible. And it's another example of what part of the problem here is, and this is where Warren was going back to earlier, I think is really important. I watched a documentary last night about pharmaceutical companies. And what we find right now is that we have a crisis in the development of antibiotics. And a lot of that stems from the fact that the intention of antibiotics are to be taken short term. That the companies put all this money into resources and development of drugs, and then people get a prescription for 10 pills, and that's it. They don't need it anymore. And Where the money is in pharmaceuticals is in medications for dementia, for high blood pressure, for cholesterol, for all these other conditions, diabetes, that require ongoing medication. And birth control is one of those. That's a very lucrative market for the pharmaceutical company. But for some reason, and if I'm not mistaken, I was going to ask Warren this anyway, wasn't there at some point a feminist demonstration against the male pill? Do you
I
remember
don't,
that?
I don't recall that. I
Yes.
will though give a little bit more details though on the Vassal gel.
Yes,
Basically,
please.
it's a gel that's put into the vas deferens, which is the duct that through which sperm travels through from the testicles through to the penis during ejaculation. And the gel, by being injected there, will prevent the sperm from passing through. And the good news is that the effect is reversible, and also the good news is that you don't have to have it done more than like a couple of times a year. But the downside is that it doesn't also prevent STDs like the other method was that I was mentioning a little while ago. And there's a lot of other things that are being developed too, like the JQ1 and other forms of, which is a compound, and that has been shown to have a lot of progress being made. But the thing that is really needed is encouragement and pressure, because we're talking about $400,000 or $500,000 being able to be enough for a drug company to do the final testing, to bring it to clinical trials, to begin the distribution and the advertisements of this. And drug companies have not been willing to put that last bit of money into this. And so even one foundation could make this happen easily, like the Gates Foundation. And so I think pressure and education on the part of us as part of the men's issues movement I think can begin to move this forward and encourage drug companies to understand that there is support, there is utility for this.
Isn't there a pill that's in the
The
working?
Philippines.
What's that?
In the Philippines, isn't there?
That's right. The JQ1
There's a
was
pill that's in the workings too.
originally developed in the Philippines, and I know that the JQ1. There's another in the Philippines. There is a plant, and the plant has been used for many years by different tribes and groups in the Philippines. The plant makes a tea, is used to make a tea, and the tea, when being drunk and consumed by somebody, allows the prevention of birth control for a period of time. And so, and there is a drug company in the United States that wanted to buy the rights for that, but they wanted to take all the profits, and they weren't willing to make a deal with the Philippine company that would allow a decent enough sharing of profits. And so that's stuck for that reason. So as an example in this last Philippines example, so much of the problem is just a matter of the drug companies not being willing to put that money into it to make it happen, or some other foundation or major group putting money into it. I mean, there are individuals, millions of individuals, that can contribute $1 million to do the kickstart and the movement of making a male birth control pill into something viable.
I heard of another pill that has to do with genetics, where they found a gene that turns off fertility. And
That's right. There is a pill that turns off turns off the gene for fertility. And
yeah,
the good news there again is that it can be turned back on again by.
yes,
So
yeah.
a good one of these a vasectomy is a very challenging thing to have. In addition to the surgery, which there can be mistakes with. If you want to go back and change your decision, it is extremely difficult to do that. The other huge thing that's important about the men's birth control pill is that it is totally unfair to women to be putting into their body all of the types of hormone changes and that occur. That is, men need to be sharing that responsibility just from an equality standpoint, from the male responsibility standpoint. And millions of men are desirous, okay with, or willing to share that responsibility. And so to treat men like we're some unwilling to be responsible fools or predators is really such an insult to our fathers and such an insult to our sons. This is not what 98% of men are about.
I agree, Warren, that it's unfair, but on the other hand, you don't see many women complaining about it.
Yes, there is some complaint among feminists, but they certainly
Really?
don't press. Yeah, so I mean, like the victim, you can have it both ways, type of thing. I want to complain about being a victim of having to be the one responsible for it, but I'm really not going to go out of my way to support a men's birth control pill. Feminists have not though been opposed as a rule to a men's birth control pill. So I want to be fair there.
I'm not so
But
sure that's completely
there's
true.
not just been no speaking up about it.
Before the protest, and what he was talking about was a protest at Budapest at an international health convention in the 90s, I think, where
Yes.
male birth control was presented as a possibility, and feminists came and protested. And what the book said, Peter Lloyd's book, Stand by Your Manhood, what he said is that the feminists said only women should have choice. And that's a very interesting perspective.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a perspective that does exist.
Yes.
That's what we call reality.
I was going to say, but the perspective is not just a perspective; it's also reality.
Only women should have choice. And that's just the bottom line. And I think that men should have choice. And I'll tell you something else. If we got a really good birth control for men, that's one pill men would not forget to take.
No, absolutely.
We would be on our game with that.
Mm-hmm.
We would take it every day faithfully if that was what
in saying that, Tom, I've got to wonder about the incredible change in social dynamics between men and women with reliable, safe, effective birth control available to men. I saw something a few weeks ago. There was a woman on Craigslist who was selling positive pregnancy tests. She was a pregnant woman and buying up pregnancy tests and getting the Blue Crosses to show and selling them online for $25 a piece, so that women could take them to their boyfriends or husbands and say, okay, here it is. You have to stay. You have to do this, whatever. I also saw a survey, and I will try to track it down and put it in a low bar, where they interviewed a couple of thousand women, and nearly 40% of them said that they would trick a man into pregnancy and deceive him about taking birth control, that they felt like that it was permissible for them to do that.
Really?
Yes. Well, so when it comes to who do we trust, and again, this is the challenge, I think, of the men's movement in so many ways. There's some data out there that isn't very flattering when it comes to looking at the belief systems of both sexes, what their real motivations are like, what they actually do. And when we talk about this, of course, it's you're a misogynist. And no, it's not being misogynist. If we have reliable data to sit and talk honestly about it, we have a problem with entitlement in this culture, in both men and women in different ways. But one of the ways that we have a problem with entitlement with women is over reproduction. But I'm just imagining the changes in social dynamics when a woman who is being disingenuous goes up to her boyfriend or husband and says, "Oh, I'm pregnant here," and shows him the Craigslist special, and he smiles and says, "Then it's not mine. I'm on the pill."
Yes.
And how this changes, it'll be a profound difference.
Yeah, it would give men power. It would give men power. Right now, we're powerless when it comes to that kind of thing, and we need that power. We need to have a balance. Right now, there's no balance.
You're absolutely right. Paul, I think it's really important that survey that you mentioned about the 40% of women saying that they would find it permissible to do that is really important for you to post that, since I think that it's important that when we speak up about these things that we are able to sort of produce the evidence for that, so
Yep.
that is that's available for people. I
I
think
will call it up, and I'm pulling this from my memory, but I think my memory's pretty darn good about this.
about that.
I will get it out there and get it in the low bar of this video this very night.
Absolutely. The second, but here is some other data on this type of issue, on paternity fraud. When we sometimes hear that 30% of men who go for paternity tests find that that in fact they are not the father, but it is important to point out that those are men who self-select to go for those paternity tests. So what is, I think, a more accurate understanding of what the danger level here is that when thousands of men are chosen randomly, and they go for paternity tests to go for a paternity test, then 10% of those men have had at least one child that is born that has been born that they thought was theirs, that was not theirs.
Is
And
that
so
right?
that is and if you multiply 10% of all of the children born in the in the country, or any given, I think those were just U.S. men that were interviewed. We're talking about millions of children being raised by people who believe that they are the father, who are not the father. What they usually are is the wealthier man among the men that the woman had sex with, or her choice of the type of man to raise them to that child.
Wow.
And so this is really this is a significant problem that affects millions of children being brought up by a father that is not their father, that has medical implications, meaning that when that child has medical problems, thinking that your father, your genes may speak to you about some solutions to those problems, or not being aware of some problems that the real father did have that you have, and you're not able to identify it because you don't know that. As genomic medicine becomes more and more specialized and personalized, children being raised that way will feel less and less able to have access to the advances in technology that genomic medicine is bringing us.
That is staggering. The
It
10,
is that's a most probably, if you really look at the dollars behind that, that's probably the most massive systemic fraud in human history.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's staggering. 10%. I mean, that
Yes.
some teacher who's got a class of 30, three of those kids, out of the 30, are likely paternity fraud kids.
Yes.
And that could be ended with mandatory paternity testing on every birth.
Yes. Mandatory paternity testing, I think, is really important, and that is part of the ABC rights that really must be mastered by young men and parents of men, and really, sometimes a woman will come up to me, a mother of a son will come up to me and say, gee, I'm really worried about my son getting AIDS or getting an STD. And I said, really, every time your son puts his penis in a woman's body, he really puts his entire life in her hands. You don't want your son to have sex irresponsibly. Um, Educate him about that. He has no rights once he has sex. That will keep his penis much more carefully wandering than
or
the
wrapped.
possibility of AIDS, because very few boys know somebody who has AIDS. But we have a much greater possibility of knowing somebody who has been told he is a dad, and now do I get married to her or do I not get married to her?
Yeah. Guys, keep in mind, your sperm is your credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Guard it carefully. Ay, ay, ay.
That is, I mean, if there's anything that came out of this discussion, I think that Tom just said it, is that
Oh yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, 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 is the deal. You know, men are programmed. The problem is that men are totally programmed to release that sperm and to scatter those seeds. We're driven toward that stuff like crazy.
And
And guess what? In 2015, that is like saying, people used to ask me what it was like for drug addicts who were addicted to snorting cocaine. And I said, well, what you do if you want to know what it's like to be a coke addict, drink about 4 large Starbucks coffees, shove the straws up your nose, and then take all your money out of your wallet and throw it. That's cocaine addiction. Uh, and your drives biologically, and this is where Warren talking about to mothers educating their sons and fathers educating their sons. We don't teach boys that their biological drives will lead them to ruin if they don't learn to master them and understand what is going on, that this is part of their programming, but that the legal situation, and the fact that their drives lead to children too. And do they want another fatherless child in society, or do they want another abortion, or do they, you know, all the consequences? But we don't sit our sons down. I've never, ever talked to a father who told me that he sat his teenage son down and told him not just the facts of life, this is how pregnancy happens, but to sit down and tell him that you're going to have these urges and understand that they can lead you to ruin, that you can be manipulated with your attractions to women, that your desire for them is something that you can be played like a fool and walk like a dog, and you can end up just lowering your self-value and sacrificing everything while you're being humiliated and you don't know it, all because of this biological drive. We don't have that talk with our boys near as much as we should. They should be aware of this stuff. I'm glad Warren brought that up about educating them about consequences instead of just teaching them this is how you got to act if you want to attract a girl.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
which is where, unfortunately, I mean, the men of my father's generation and men of my generation mostly just say, well, if you want to get a girl, you gotta, you know, you gotta dress like this, you gotta, you know, do that, and you gotta be nice, you gotta follow this particular set of rules, and never talk to them about safeguarding their own lives and their own futures.
Yes.
So when you see what you remember our discussion, Tom and Paul, around, you know, whether I should put you know, an outline of a naked, beautiful woman on the front cover of the Myth of Male Power, and you know, I was so committed to that because female beauty is what is the biggest source of male feeling powerless, and so we're more likely to do irrational things to have access to that beautiful woman's sexuality than we are to do irrational things in almost any other sphere. And then when on top of that powerlessness that is so necessary for a father to explain to a child and to talk with a boy about, which is, I think, as you said, a conversation that almost never happens, the boy also needs to understand that, you know, that when a government requires a man to support a child he was tricked into creating, that government is really subsidizing fraud. And in a way it's worse than just fraud, because fraud is usually, when it's subsidized, we think of a moment in time. But fraud being subsidized by the government, this is subsidizing a woman to use a man's body for 18 to 21 years directly without his consent, and all his life in a different way without his consent. And so, you know, so to support a child that you're tricked into creating, that is one of the ultimate forms of powerlessness. If you know, when women talk about, you know, having their body be used without their permission, I think it's very valid. A woman's body should not be used without their permission, but neither should a man's body be used by trick. Nobody has any empathy for a man who puts a pill into a woman's drink and then tricks her into having sex that way. And yet, if we put a pill if we don't put a pill in a woman's body and a man is tricked into having sex being told that a pill was in her body, and then the government forces him to raise the child and pay for the child, even if he doesn't have contact with the child anyway, this is an ultimate government subsidizing of fraud.
Yeah, yeah, well said.
Amen. Very well said.
Yeah. Before we go, can we talk a little bit about what can anyone do, any man out there, what can he do to try and facilitate a male pill? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Is it something men can do?
I think directly contacting pharmaceutical companies at the highest level that you can access and say, if you produce a male contraceptive, I want to buy it. Do some research. I mean, come ask around the forums at AVFM. There's going to be guys there, because I can't list them all, who can tell you which companies are looking into doing what. Call those companies and tell them, hey, look, I care about this, and write a letter to them, email them, make some sort of contact and let them know, because as Warren so rightly pointed out, the drug companies, either one, and this is not Warren, this is me, I think there are elements at work to prevent this from happening. It costs upwards of $1 billion in some cases to develop one drug. And so why some of these pharmaceutical companies would do all the research and development and then not throw the last 400,000 or 500,000 into finishing the product and getting it human trials and all that for presentation is a little suspicious to me. I'm not going to put on my tinfoil hat. I'm just going to say that it's suspicious. But the other thing is that if those companies realize the demand for the product, if they really realized how much they could sell of this, they wouldn't care so much about the pressures, whether they're there or not, and they would produce those drugs. So I think the best way to do it is you call the producers or the potential producers of these drugs and tell them to get with it, that you're a customer.
Yes, and tell them you're going to buy it if it comes out.
Yep.
They'll listen to that.
I think your suggestion, Paul, is really good, and I think it's important for somebody that's listening to this that can maybe begin to ask other people in A Voice for Men to pull together some of the drug companies that are actively researching this and have moved the meter forward on this. Certainly, we know that Parsimus is working on that, and we know the names of some of the other companies. So let's get that list together, get that out there, and really create a campaign to contact these drug companies and say what's happening. We want it. There's a demand. There's money in our pocket that we are desirous of spending for this.
Yeah, I think another thing that comes to my mind is to just bring this stuff up at the workplace, at home, wherever. Just start talking about it. Say, hey, why don't men have a pill? And
Yes.
get that conversation out there.
Yes.
And when people start talking about things, the media starts to pick it up. So we want to try and create some interest and just bringing it out. I mean, how many times have you heard someone say, "Why don't men have a pill?" I don't think you've probably ever heard anybody say that. So,
Well, Paul, I got to say that part of that is because there will likely be a lot of women who say, "What do you want that for? Just get a condom." And you're going to have to be prepared to say, "I want that because I want it."
yeah, really. Or
And also reverse it. Would a condom be enough for you?
Yeah, exactly. And say, how about we take all of your options away other than an IUD?
Yes. No, I think, bringing it out, making the conversation start, getting it out there. I think that's another thing to do.
Yep. We take articles all the time. Anybody out there? We're backlogged with them now. I've got to mention something about that in closing, but anybody out there want to write articles about this? Write letters or petitions to send to pharmaceutical companies? You know where to come. We'll deliver it. We'll put it out there, and we'll get it done.
And you do already have, I think, an article up, Paul, on that, a little bit of an excerpt from Father and Child Reunion on the men's birth control pill. So, something.
I have to unfortunately say that the editors were not able to get to that finish before we started today, but it will be coming up, and it will include a link to Warren's book, Father and Child Reunion, which is absolutely must-reading, well, like all his other books. So,
and this excerpt is really a jewel. You know,
yes, it is.
learn a tremendous amount about the male pill by reading this excerpt. So I'm looking forward to seeing that on AVFM.
And hopefully we will get that up by tomorrow, so for everybody reading it. Speaking of that, are we about wrapping up here, guys?
I think we're about wrapping up.
Okay, I got a couple of announcements that I need to make. One, every once in a while I point people to an article that's particularly great at AVFM, and I want to take that opportunity tonight. Dean Esme has written a critique and analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird. And it is nothing short of brilliant, and it is very disturbing, and it's so instructive in the effect of helping people understand that when we get into this idea that feminism is the problem, and don't start looking at the whole context of prejudices in society and gynocentrism and how that plays out culturally, we're misidentifying what the real problem is. To Kill a Mockingbird, part of what Dean said is that we're all Tom Robinson, and he's absolutely right. We're all Tom Robinson now because allegations fly. Anyway, please, it's on the front page right now. If you want to spend a very worthwhile 20 minutes or so, go read that article. It's a very, very good piece.
It's a piece.
The other, yes, it is.
Looking forward to reading that. That sounds fascinating.
It is. He did a brilliant job, and he put some clips of the movie in there too. Everything very well done.
Robinson, and Atticus Finch is a rare bird.
Yes, he is. The other thing is we're going to be coming up shortly. I'm hoping by early next week, an announcement, official announcement, our first one about the International Conference on Men's Issues for 2015. Very excited about that. Can't give any details, but I just want to give everybody a heads up to be looking for that. We're getting really excited about this one. It's going to be better than the last, and the last was amazing. And let's see, what else was there? I think I had something else, but if I can't remember it, it couldn't have been that important. So I'll just surrender at that point. Oh, yes, Janice Fiamingo. Professor Janice Fiamingo of the University of Ottawa, an inordinately brave woman who has stood up to heckling and harassment in order to offer critiques of the feminism that she so embraced in her younger days, and seeing what it's become and changing her mind about the nature of human sexual relations, is decided to pen a book. And what she wants is to write about the experiences of young men in college. And she is asking for submissions of essays from between 500 and 2,000 words. They don't need to be really long. She'd prefer men that are born after 1980s. She wanted to stick with the younger crowd to get into that demographic of young men that are going to college. But I think this is a fantastic idea because, for one reason, we seldom ever ask men anything, like, tell us what it's like for you. I mean, how often do we ask men, tell us what it's like for you? Yeah. One of the things that I am convinced that made A Voice for Men very, very successful is because that's exactly what we did. We said, tell us what it's like for you, and allowed that voice a platform. But I was delighted to hear from Janice. She's an incredible person and has an incredible partner. So if you are interested, there will be an announcement coming out later tonight, put on the site with an email address to contact Janice, and we would certainly appreciate your support of her effort to get that book out there about the experience of young men in college.
Well, that sounds great, Paul. That sounds really great. Because Janet you're right, she's brave, she's also brilliant. You know, I'm really looking forward to that book. That's great.
Yep.
Good. So are we about finished?
I guess we are. Warren already left the room.
Yeah, well, if Warren's gone, I guess we better stop.
We have to stop now.
It's good to be with everybody tonight. Thank you all, and let's not forget there is no I in MANstream, and men are indeed good. You all have a good week. We'll see you next Thursday.
Bye-bye now.